Faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. It's time for Faith to Live By with Sue Taylor.
Thank you for joining me today on Faith to Live By. This is Sue Taylor. You know, today's program is entitled Letting Go, but Holding Fast. I have just recently returned from an extended trip to the Great Northwest where I've been visiting children, grandchildren, and friends. And I confess that it is difficult for me to leave my family, especially letting go of a little 1.5-year-old redheaded granddaughter. But I have learned, as I'm sure you have, that life is about letting go. Letting go physically and/or emotionally. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 that there is a time for everything under the sun. And there is a time to hold on, and there's a time to let go. Letting go is easier said than done because it denotes loss. So many times letting go can be a slow process, as we find ourselves holding on much too long, and then sometimes to our detriment and to the detriment of others. One definition of letting go is to stop holding or gripping something or someone. It also means to move or proceed, especially to or from something. Many of us never get to move forward because we can't let go. I believe the greatest psychology teacher that ever lived, Jesus Christ, and the Bible show us a much more fulfilling way of letting go, which in the end is and can be less painful, and it can actually lead to gain. 1 Thessalonians 5:31 tells us to test all things and hold fast to that what is good. We are never to let go of that which is good and which will lead to not only our good, but to the good of others. Testing all things is to ask ourselves some serious questions at times, such as, God, what am I holding on to? Am I holding on too tightly? Am I refusing to let go of my past failures and even my successes? Am I holding on too tightly to my children so as not allowing them to become the men and women of God that you created them to be? Am I holding on to my possessions, my position, even my profession of my Christian beliefs that may need some adjustments? Contrary to some worldly thinking and teaching, I can't fix what I think is wrong. I can take some steps in the right direction, but in the end, it is God who does the fixing. I have learned that my part is to trust and to pray, and God's part is to work. It says, being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. To let go involves trust. Trust in someone more knowledgeable than me and someone who has the power to do what I cannot do. Trust involves having faith, receiving biblical counsel, sitting still in His presence, and waiting. One of the most beautiful stories in the Bible regarding letting go is the story of Ruth, and sometimes it seems that we women have a more difficult time of letting go than men do. Now, the story of Ruth begins with 3 widows, Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth. All of them have experienced loss, without them maybe comprehending how much they have lost, but they are in the process of letting go as we read the story. These 3 women have been described as the grieving widow, the leaving widow, and the cleaving widow. Now, Naomi, the grieving widow, has decided to move back to her home in Judah, and her 2 daughters-in-laws decided to return with her. She urged them to go back, that she had no more sons to offer them, and she wasn't sure of what she was even returning to. Now the leaving widow, Orpah, did just that. She returned to her own people in her own land. Now many of us have opportunities to leave and cleave and go forward, but in the process of letting go, fear of hardship or fear of the unknown or lack of interest get in the way, and we decide to stay where we are, where it's familiar, where it's comfortable. Now, I'm not saying this is always bad, but many times we miss out on blessings because we can't or won't let go of what is behind us. We choose the most convenient or the easiest course at times. Now, Naomi, she was the grieving widow. She had lost her husband, her sons, and she was letting go and going forward. She had heard that there was food and not famine in her homeland, and in spite of her losses, she was going forward even in her grief. Going forward or having a change is sometimes the best way to deal with our grief and to let it go. Now, Ruth is known as the cleaving widow. Even after hearing her mother-in-law's words of discouragement to go back, she chose to go forward, even when she knew it would not be easy. She knew that there would be hard work and maybe even poverty ahead of her. And Naomi, especially without a male provider, but yet she chose to let go of her homeland, her people, her place of comfort, and follow a godly woman. She followed out of love. She left all because of love. You know, beloved, when our motives are pure and are based on the greatest attribute of all, love, we are setting ourselves up for a blessing. So the story goes on that as they arrive in Naomi's hometown, Ruth finds work in a field belonging to a distant relative of Naomi, who had the right to redeem her and all that belonged to her. And the story reveals how God led this woman, Ruth, to take her mother-in-law's advice. Her mother-in-law said to her, "Sit still, my daughter, until you know how the matter will turn out. For the man will not rest until he has concluded the matter this day." When we take a matter to God in trust, our part is to sit still and wait until God concludes the matter for us. He will tell us what part, if any, that we are to play. But until He does, the best thing we can do is to sit still at His feet and trust Him. It's letting go of our fear and letting go of the unknown. He is our Redeemer, and He is interested in everything and everyone that concerns us. Jesus Christ bids us not to worry or fret over cares and anxieties of the world, but to place it all in His loving hands and let Him work it out. Our part is to step out in faith and trust God with the impossible. I am sure when Ruth left all behind and let go of her past, she experienced moments of fear and doubt. But she clung to the one who had the answers, to a godly woman of faith, even when she didn't know the God of that woman. That is all God asks us to do in letting go. Don't grieve, just leave everything in God's hand, cleave to Him, and hold fast to the good hand of God, and you will find, beloved, that you will have the faith you need to live by.
You've been listening to Faith to Live By with Sue Taylor. If you would like to write with your comments or to request a copy of this program for an $8 donation, write Sue Taylor, 10827 Highway 86 East, Neosho, Missouri 64850. Sue Taylor is a member of the KNEO team and a keynote speaker at several church and women's events throughout the 4-state area. To book Sue for your next event, contact Sky High Radio at 417-451-5636.